While one sport at WVU may have just ended, another is set to begin as we kick off our spring coverage here on the Country Roads webcast with our first Presser Points video of the spring season here. Let's hear Neal Brown's thoughts as we get ready to kick off the 2023 edition of West Virginia spring football practice. Let's go. What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Jordan Cruz back here with the Country Roads webcast. And before I get into this video, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. If you would, do us a favor, hit that like button on this video, give us a thumbs up. It really helps not only this video's performance, but future videos' performances here on the channel as well. And if you're a WVU fan and you haven't already, be sure and hit that subscribe button. It helps us and it helps you as it helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get into it. Let's dive in here right away. No further ado as he discusses his objectives that he has for the team this spring.
I think the first one is establish an identity. And that's something we really, from the start, we've kind of treated January as kind of a new beginning. And even though we're going into year 5 here, we've kind of gone back and back to the basics. And really what we want to do is we want to establish our identity. And we've laid it out in 4 ways. And I'll share with you all what I share with our players. Is first of all, we want to be disciplined. I think sometimes discipline has a negative connotation. That's not what this is. When you talk about discipline, we got to get our alignments, our assignments. We got to be better conditioned. Second thing is strain, just playing with extreme effort. Third thing is physicality, and that's what we really got to work on this spring, is just from a blocking and tackling perspective. And the fourth thing is just smart. We've got to, we're putting a focus on situational football and being better in certain situations. So the first objective is just establishing our identity. Second thing is competition. And we got competition for spots. We got competition we do in special teams wise. And then offense and defense, obviously, going against each other all spring. We want to focus on our fundamentals. We want to get repetitions on our schemes. And then we got to evaluate personnel.
So as Coach Brown stated, they're pretty straightforward on these spring objectives for West Virginia heading into spring football practice. The standout one for me there, I think, obviously, is establishing an identity. I think that's something we can all probably agree that West Virginia has kind of lacked to do in the past. And we know with the team they have coming back, the strong offensive line, the running back room being really strong as well, and a couple quarterbacks that can really be good in the run game. That's something they're probably going to focus on offensively. So hopefully they can establish a little bit of identity with a run game and hopefully being a little bit more physical as well. But I'll be interested to see what this team's identity turns out to be. Hopefully it's something along those lines. But speaking of that offense, here are Neal Brown's thoughts a little bit on that offense, as well as some injuries that have occurred along the offense, both players that will be out and that will be limited for West Virginia this spring.
I'll start on offense. Energized by the staff changes. Bilal Marshall at wide receivers, Blaine Stewart, both young guys have a ton of juice about them. Really enjoying that. Chad's embraced the role. Our guys enjoy him, and so excited about those guys. O-line wise, I think it's about establishing depth this spring, and then finding some position fits. We're going to move some guys around just to give us some versatility. Excited to see some guys like Sullivan Weedman. I think he's ready to take a next step. Guy redshirted. Mo Hamilton, same, and then Dylan Ray. Those are some guys I'm really kind of excited about. Frazier will be limited. He'll be practicing, but he'll be limited a little bit this spring. Probably keep him out of some 11-on-11 work. At receiver, I think it's about who's going to be the guy. Who's going to fill, that role of being kind of the go-to guy. I think we've got some guys that, Devin Carter's obviously done that at another school. We have high expectations for him, but I think there's going to be some real growth. I think Jeremiah Aaron, Cortez Braham, Preston Fox, Hudson Clement, Jarrell Williams. I think those guys have had really productive winters, and I think they're ready to take a step. Running back, it's just for that room to continue to grow. We got to find ways to get multiple running backs on the field. We'll do some of that in the spring. CJ will be limited. He'll practice. He'll be a little limited as he recovers from the surgery that he had at the end of the fall. And then at tight end, I think the main point for them is getting them involved in the pass game. Excited about seeing Cole Taylor. We need Victor and Will Dixon. Those guys. Those are two that we really need to push and get more out of.
So as you can hear, there are several players limited, couple players out. I think the standout thing there for me on offense is some of the reshuffling that he's talking about along the offensive line. I'm going to do a separate video on that entirely. Look for that coming out here on the channel in the future as well. I think they're offensively, of course, we know that they're going to probably be more run heavy. As I mentioned earlier, there's going to be some changes schematically. So certainly that's probably the side people are going to pay the most attention to during spring and in the spring game, looking to see how much different that it does look there. So definitely very interested in the offense. Flipping it over to the other side, let's hear some of Coach Brown's thoughts on the defense as well, of players that'll be out or limited in the spring there on that side of the ball.
On defense, it's really about getting back to basics. You know, we did not play up to our standards last year, and we've simplified from a schematic standpoint, and so early on, yes, alignment and communication is going to be the focal point on that side of the ball. Talking about the defensive line, is we've got some newcomers up there and some guys that got to increase their role, and so we're going to really push them. You know, I think that everything defensively starts up front and then moves backwards, and so we've got to be able to establish the line of scrimmage and get back in. And we've done that in the past. Didn't do as good a job of it last year, and so that's going to be a point of emphasis. Just so you know, limited Jalen Thornton will be limited, and then out for the spring will be Zachy Lawton. He's recovering from surgery that kept him out of the second half of the season last year. And then Asani Redwood. Asani had an injury during the winter that will keep him out for spring ball. At linebacker, I think Lee Koba is ready to take a next step. Really, for Trey Lathan, Jeremiah Trotter, Ben Cutter, Jaito, you know, some of those guys, this spring is huge for them because getting live reps. And I really think that's a position where we're going to show a lot of improvement. I'm excited about that group. There's some youth in there, but there's talent. And then at outside linebacker, you know, Bartlett, I think is had one of the best winners in our program. And then James Hurd, really excited to see him, and as good a pass rusher as we brought in here from a high school perspective. And then in the secondary, you know, that's going to be a group that we put a lot of pressure on them last year, and some guys had to play maybe before they were ready. And I think what happens a lot of times is you got to go through some pain there, which we did. We went through some pain with our secondary play last year, but also expect that to be one of the most improved units on our team. And so we simplified some to help them. And, you know, and my expectation is we'll be much improved, and I think it'll show by the end of the spring.
All right. So interesting there. Thoughts on the defense. At least they are kind of addressing the struggles that they had last season. I think even later on in the press conference, he mentioned that they lacked getting turnovers, and the change that they're doing schematically, simplifying things is hopefully going to help them in coverage and hopefully lead to more turnovers. That's their hope here. We'll see what happens. And then talking about fixing things, of course, we know the program needs to be fixed. We know that expectations haven't been met throughout Mountaineer Nation the past 4 seasons. We're hoping to finally see an improvement this year. If not, things are probably going to change. And I think Neal Brown and the staff certainly know that as well. They know there's things to fix. Neal Brown mentions that here.
And just wrapping up, this is our first opportunity to get it fixed, you know, and we're not trying to hide from last year not being good enough. You know, I think that when you talk about getting things fixed, and this is the way that we've been talking about it program wise, and I'll say it publicly. I think this comes from one of our data analytics companies. It talks about the 3 E's, you know, so first one is efficiency. And so we've got to get better at first down, third down, and red zone efficiency. We've got to be better in those areas. And then it's about explosives. And last year we gave up way too many explosive plays, and we got to figure out a way offensively to utilize our ability to run the ball to create explosives down the field. And the third E be eliminate errors. You know, offensively, that's procedure penalties, that's turnovers, TFL, sacks. Defensively, it's alignment issues and communication and missed tackles. You know, so when we talk about fixing it, which is what we've got to do, you know, I know that's a term that Hugs has used, but is efficiency, explosives, and eliminate errors.
So interesting. They're at least addressing the fact that they know that there's something that needs fixed. I guess that is the positive you can bring out of there. Talking about the 3 E's, of course, is the way that he believes that he can fix it. We'll see how that plays out. But we know that West Virginia is going to have a different quarterback behind center as they try and fix this program. It's either going to be Garrett Green or Nico Marchiol. Neal Brown talked a little bit about that competition here as he talks about probably not naming a starter until the fall. So don't expect to hear anything as far as who's going to be the number one guy coming out of the spring more than likely. But also here later in the press conference, I've meshed these two clips together. He talks a little bit about these quarterbacks and their ability to run the football, something I've been excited about, something Mountaineer Nation's kind of been clamoring for as well as a whole, was having another running quarterback again, because we've been successful at WVU in the past with running quarterbacks. So definitely here's his thoughts on the quarterback competition, as well as the benefits that you can get from having a quarterback that can run behind center when you're trying to develop your offense, and how West Virginia's offense is kind of going to develop around that this spring. Here, Neal Brown's thoughts on the quarterback position heading into spring football.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to set expectations. I don't plan on making a decision on this. So this is just really clear until we get into fall camp. Okay. And that's what I've shared with both of them. This is going to be, we're playing the long game on this. And so we'll split the reps with Garrett and Nico through the entire spring. And there's going to be some ups and downs with that. But we're going to split the reps. We'll carry that competition in the summer into the fall. Now, if it's just really clear, then we'll make a choice. But I don't foresee that happening. We have running quarterbacks now for the first time, and that both the guys that are vying for the starting quarterback job are both capable of pulling the ball on any read plays, but also calling quarterback runs, which changes the game. It makes it easier from a play calling perspective and puts pressure on it, especially on some first and third downs where we've got to get better.
All right. So say what you will about this year's team. I know a lot of people aren't expecting them to do much, but that's certainly one aspect of it that I'm excited about, is having a running quarterback again and having an offense that features the quarterback run game a little bit. So I'm very excited by those comments and excited to see how that plays out this spring, all culminating there in the spring game. We'll hopefully get a good look at both of those quarterbacks. And we know that quarterback is a leadership position on the football team. And Neal Brown was indeed asked about leadership on this 2023 West Virginia team heading into spring, specifically on the defensive side of the football, where they lost a lot of leaders, more specifically Dante Stills, who we know the team's all-time leader in starts, all-time leader in games played, all-time leader in tackles for loss. Lost a lot there in Dante Stills, who had been a leader on this team for a few years now. And when in losing him, Neal Brown was asked about who he thought could replace that role and fulfill the leadership role there on this defense, a defense that really needs to improve. Let's check out Neal Brown's thoughts here as far as who could step up as leaders on the West Virginia defense heading into spring.
Well, I think we have natural guys that are positioned to move up in that role, right? So like a Sean Martin. Sean Martin's played a bunch of football. He's as talented as anyone we have. And my expectation is his production is going to match his talent, maybe exceed that this year. But he's also one of the best people we have in our program. We always talk about leaders. Well, who are your leaders? Well, they're your best players. They're your hardest workers, or your best people, right? Well, your best players are always pretty obvious, right? They produce at a high level. Your best people, those are guys like Grayson. He's one examples, guys that do the right things. Those take a little bit longer to establish. Okay. And who are your hardest workers? Well, that takes a little time as well, right? Well, Sean Martin, playing defensive end, he fits all three of those criteria. He's one of our best players, one of the hardest workers, one of the best people, right? So I think the natural progression for him is as he moves into a starting role, which he started most of the year last year, but now he's more comfortable, he's more confident. Now he can feel like a leader of that group. And at the second level is Lee, who's been in our program now for a year, was productive, has some things he's got to get better at, has attacked those in the offseason. Then the secondary, Aubrey Burks. Aubrey was, I thought at times last year he played at an elite level, and now he's more confident. He feels really good about knowing the whole structure of the defense. And so now, as someone that's had success and is a really hard worker, I think he'll naturally go into that leadership role as well.
All right, so there Neal Brown mentioning not only some young guys that have leadership capabilities, but more specifically in reference to the leadership question, he mentioned Sean Martin right away, but he kind of picked out a leader on all three levels, and I would tend to agree with him that those are probably the three standout players of this defense. Sean Martin going to step up there on the defensive line, Lee Koba coming into his second year there, running the Mike linebacker position for West Virginia, and then Aubrey Burks at safety. Was a standout last year quietly. Not a lot of people know or are talking about him, but they really should be. Highest graded safety in the Big 12, according to PFF. Really great season for Aubrey Burks, in which he didn't even get to play the full season, was out part of it due to an injury. So I think there's high expectations for him there. But like the fact that Neal Brown thinks he has leaders at all three levels, and we'll see how it plays out here throughout the spring as we get ready to head into West Virginia's 2023 season. And as we do, they're constantly building this roster now in transfer portal season here. We know the transfer portal era of college football is upon us. The new transfer portal windows are being implemented this year, so no one can enter the portal right now, but that will change after the spring football season is over, when the transfer portal opens back up in May, coinciding with the end of most spring practices there. So we'll have another wave of roster additions potentially there in the summer as we get set to fall camp, where you're building the roster all the way up to the start of the fall there, potentially with the new way that college football works. And having said that, we know West Virginia is not done in the transfer portal. Still some positions they'd like to target. Neal Brown mentioned exactly what positions those would be.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's start with the transfer piece. So still like to add D-line, when we talk about May, I think we still have room for a secondary piece. And then offensively, just want to kind of let it see, wideout would be the first thing. The good thing is the way the rules work. We'll be able to evaluate in the spring and have a clear path going into May when the portal window opens up.
So there you have it. That will pretty much wrap up this edition of Presser Points here on the Country Roads webcast. Those were kind of the standout segments that I thought stood out the most from Neal Brown that I wanted to comment on and kind of get your all's thoughts on as well. And speaking of getting your all's thoughts, we'll have a chance to do that more often here with spring football going on, during spring football practices. And of course, then again in the fall during fall camp as well. We'll be going live every week, once a week, one night there in the evening, usually Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere in there, with a Q&A live stream. That'll kick off this week, looking like our first one's going to be this Thursday, but of course stay tuned to our social media there, Twitter at WVU Country Roads, for an announcement on when that will be. Probably Thursday night though, with our first in-season Q&A stream here. Chat with us live there. We can answer your questions, comments, and just kind of have a dialogue about Mountaineer football there, coming up most likely this Thursday here on the Country Roads webcast channel. In the meantime, though, comment your thoughts below on Neal Brown's press conference here to kick off spring, some of the standout things that we've shown you here in this Presser Points video. And always appreciate the engagement with you guys there in the comments as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation here. Other than that, be on the lookout for other content from us here on the Country Roads webcast. Specifically on the podcast side, going to release a football podcast here with spring football set to begin. That's coming out in the next few days, as well as a CRW Hoops podcast, kind of recapping West Virginia's performance there in the NCAA tournament, and maybe talking about the season as a whole a little bit there and what West Virginia should do there moving forward now as they look ahead to the next West Virginia Mountaineer basketball season. I'm looking forward to looking ahead to this upcoming West Virginia football season with you guys coming up here in more videos, live streams, podcasts, etc. But this presser from Neal Brown was a great start to spring, and I hope you guys enjoyed my video here covering it on the Country Roads webcast. Like I said, drop your thoughts on Neal Brown's press conference in the comments. Let's talk about it a little bit as we get set to kick off the 2023 WVU football season, and I, for one, can't wait. Regardless of what's expected of this team, I'm always excited to watch some Mountaineer football. 0-12 or 12-0, as I always say, going to be there pulling for the Mountaineers, as I'm sure most of you all are throughout Mountaineer Nation as well, and are probably starting to get excited now that we've reached spring football, just like I am, and we'll be here to cover it along the way on the Country Roads webcast. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.